My savings, which I have accumulated through hard work since my single days, were meant to be untouched for our children's future. I never expected those savings to be used for such a thing. Just because we're married doesn't mean anything goes. My name is Alyssa, and I'm 32 years old. I married Greg when I was 24. And I got pregnant soon after. We now have 2 children. My son is 7 and my daughter is 5. Both are growing up healthy without any major illnesses. When my daughter turned 3, I returned to my previous job. 2 years have passed since I resumed work, and now I earn about the same salary as Greg. Since he only contributes the bare minimum to our living expenses, I have to save for myself and our children from my own salary. I really wish Greg would cooperate more. However, whenever I bring up money, he always looks annoyed and even gets grumpy with the children. So, I've stopped talking about money in front of him. Then one day, my sister-in-law Megan came to our house. I happened to be working from home that day. Alyssa, please. Let me stay with you for a while. As soon as I opened the door, Megan burst into tears and clung to me. Confused by the suddenness, I was perplexed. Wait, what's going on? My husband wants a divorce. What? A divorce. Megan was still single when Greg and I got married. And she only got married a year ago to a man who seemed very kind and worked for a corporation. They looked so happy at their wedding. But now, just a year later, they are talking about divorce. I couldn't just leave her crying, so I let her into the house. I decided to hear her out first. Well, Megan, I know it's tough, but why suddenly a divorce? Sniffling, Megan opened up. I haven't done anything wrong. But he suddenly says he can't stand living with me anymore. Isn't that terrible? What? Your husband said that. Don't you think it's awful? You must think I'm pitiable, right, Alyssa? She pressed me intensely, making me feel undue pressure. However, it's hard to believe that her kind husband would propose divorce without any reason. I managed to calm her down and decided to wait for Greg to come home from work. When Greg returned, we put the kids to bed and started discussing with Megan. So, Megan, why has it come to divorce? As Greg asked, Megan began crying again. I want to know that too. I've been working hard for him all this time. And yet, he says, it's impossible to live with you. Isn't that cruel? Despite her saying that, there's no way her husband would come up with such an idea without a reason. Listening to her alone won't solve anything. Megan has always had a selfish and willful side. That might be why this divorce is happening. Well, Megan, are you sure there's really no reason at all? Your husband isn't the type to be unreasonable. As I gently defended her husband, Megan glared at me sharply. What, Alyssa? Are you taking his side over mine? I've been working hard as a wife. And yet he's pushing me towards divorce. No. It's not about taking sides. But I doubt he would bring up divorce without any reason. What do you know about him, Alyssa? You're defending him too much. After a pause, Megan looked at me suspiciously. Oh, don't tell me, Alyssa, you're not having an affair with him, are you? What? No way. Oh my, the conversation has taken a strange turn. Of course. There's nothing untoward between Megan's husband and me. I don't even have his contact information. Thankfully, Greg also chimed in. Megan, that's not possible. Don't worry. And I felt a bit relieved. Still, it's curious. Despite Megan claiming she worked hard as a wife, she is vague about why she is facing divorce. I asked Greg to urgently invite his brother over. Megan had already left, saying she didn't want to meet him. Upon arrival, Megan's husband apologized right away, saying, "Sorry for causing trouble for you too." I decided to delve into the details because it seemed unlikely such a reasonable person would ask for a divorce without cause. "Well, I'm sorry to ask so suddenly, but why did you bring up divorce with Megan?" Megan's husband looked troubled and looked down. "Did you perhaps cheat on her?" "Hey, Greg. How can you say such a thing?" I scolded Greg for his inappropriate comment. After a moment, Megan's husband finally spoke up. "Actually, Megan has spent all of my savings, about $50,000. $50,000. I exclaimed, shocked by the amount. He hadn't been upfront because it involved money, which isn't a pretty topic. $50,000. What did she spend it on? I asked cautiously, and he sighed deeply. I asked her, but she only said it was for living expenses. I've been giving her a fixed amount every month for living expenses. But she said it wasn't enough. Feeling apologetic, I thought to myself, it's believable Megan would do this. Because she had also nonchalantly asked us for money during her single days. She'd say, "We're family, right?" and even went through my wallet without asking. Knowing this side of Megan, I found her husband's story all too plausible. He slumped in disappointment. If she can explain what she spent my savings on and agrees to repay it, I'd consider pausing the divorce. But she keeps insisting it was for living expenses. I felt terribly sorry for Megan's husband. They don't even have children. And he was giving Megan an allowance. It's suspicious that she spent $50,000 in just a year. Eventually, Greg spoke up. "So, if she returns the money, the divorce could be avoided?" "Yeah. Got it, I'll talk to her about it." Greg took on the responsibility, but I wondered how Megan, a homemaker, planned to repay the money. I wondered if he was going to repay in place of her. After sending Megan's husband off, Megan returned home. What happened? What did he say? As Megan bombarded him with questions, Greg confidently replied, "If you return the $50,000 you spent, he won't ask for a divorce." To which Megan firmly responded, "How could I possibly have that kind of money? I only used it for living expenses and did nothing wrong." It's unclear if Megan really spent it all on living expenses. But her insistence that she's completely blameless is troubling. Megan's husband's decision to propose divorce seems reasonable. Just then, Greg said something outrageous. "Don't worry, Megan, Alyssa has lots of savings." What? I exclaimed involuntarily as my money was taken for granted. Megan's eyes lit up as she turned to me. "Really? Alyssa, you should have said something sooner." "No way, this is wrong." What are they even saying? Especially Greg, damn husband. He can't just decide to use someone else's savings. After cursively reprimanding them in my mind, I calmed down and firmly declined. "Well, I can't lend you my savings." "If you really need money, ask Greg." Upon hearing this, Greg inexplicably lashed out. "Hey Alyssa. Megan is really struggling. Don't you want to help her?" "Exactly, Alyssa. With your savings, I could avoid divorcing my husband." Both Greg and Megan were now spouting nonsense, proving they were indeed siblings. I genuinely sympathized with Megan's husband. and thought it might be better for him to get a divorce sooner rather than later. Greg, not liking my stance, exploded again. Are you serious, Alyssa? When my sister, our family, is struggling, you can't even lend just $50,000. Just $50,000. When he said that, something inside me snapped. I felt my body heat up as anger surged through me. Just $50,000. Don't be ridiculous. This money, I saved up from my single days. Why should I use it for your sister who squandered her husband's money? I've always said it's for our children's future. I managed to hold back my trembling body. Megan stood there with her mouth agape, overwhelmed. Greg looked shocked but quickly retorted. Well, you can just save up again. Megan needs that money now. Are you kidding me? I don't care. I spat back fiercely. Then you lend her the money if it's so important. You're her real sibling. And isn't it embarrassing to ask your wife to solve your sister's problems? What? Greg turned red with anger, biting his lip, unable to respond. Fine. I want a divorce from such a heartless woman. Divorce? You mean you and me? That's right. I don't need a heartless woman who won't help family. Suddenly, he rummaged through a drawer and pulled out divorce papers. He signed them and stamped them right in front of me. Here, sign this quickly. So he kept such documents just in case. I was worried about our children. Taking them away from their father was concerning. He smirked at me, perhaps thinking I wouldn't go through with it. You can't do it, can you? You wouldn't dare become a single mother suddenly. Would you? Better to lend my sister the $50,000, right? At that moment, everything became irrelevant. I was done. Better to be a single mother than to deal with such ridiculous siblings. I signed the divorce papers and stamped them. What? Alyssa. He seemed truly shocked that I had signed. Tomorrow, I'll file these. I started packing my things and the kids silently. Craig, panicking, asked, Alyssa, you're really going to file that? Of course. Why wouldn't I? Why so casually? Didn't you give it to me to sign first? Well, yes, but... The next morning, I submitted the divorce papers to the court first thing. Greg and Megan probably hadn't slept much, as they looked completely worn out. I told the children, let's go to Grandpa and Grandma's house, and prepared them for the move. It seemed cruel to suddenly tell them about the divorce, especially since they are still so young. I planned to explain things to them calmly and simply once we had settled down a bit. When I was leaving with the children, Greg had tears in his eyes. Alyssa, you're coming back, right? This isn't really going to end in divorce, is it? But it is. It's too late to cancel it now. From now on, please indulge your beloved sister to your heart's content and support each other. I said this with heavy sarcasm, throwing the words back at him. However, I truly felt sorry for the children. Due to our selfish reasons, they were losing their father and the home they had lived in. Nevertheless, if I had continued to let those two dictate my life, my savings would have been devoured. And even the future of these children would have been at risk. I refused to have my life thrown into disarray by such unreasonable siblings. I moved back to my parents' house, where I explained the situation and asked to stay for a while. After explaining things in simple terms, the children accepted the situation, saying, as long as Mom is with us, that's fine. And Mom has always been there for us. Greg kept contacting me persistently after that, but now I block all his calls. The divorce has already been finalized. And I plan to hire a lawyer to ensure child support payments. Meanwhile, Megan and her husband also divorced soon after. She claimed to have used the savings for living expenses, but it turned out she had been splurging on luxury brands. When Megan's husband secretly searched her room, he was shocked to find a large stash of luxury goods. As a result, she was forced into divorce and had to reimburse the $50,000 she had spent without mercy. She managed to return about $20,000 with what was left of Greg's modest savings. But she will have to work to pay back the remaining $30,000. Now that the divorce is settled, I have to pay the property division. Please help me. She tried to appeal to her parents with her usual crying antics. But since I had already explained everything to them, they quickly refused her. Not only Megan, but Greg too was severely reprimanded. And they both ended up being disowned. Really, those siblings are beyond saving. At least I hope they manage without causing trouble for others. I'm truly glad that Greg and Megan didn't end up taking it from me. I will continue to use this money carefully to ensure my children grow up well.
I'm Sarah. Mom and Dad, who never completed high school, have been saving as much as they can for my education fund since I was a young child. They put forth a lot of effort because they thought that education would help me live a better life. In order to make sure that their efforts were not in vain, I worked really hard throughout high school. We all shed happy tears when I received my acceptance letter to study investment management at one of the best universities. My time in college was thrilling and busy. To maintain some money in my pocket, I balanced tutoring part-time and attending school. I met Mark that way. He ended up getting paired with me for additional support because he was a year behind me and was having some difficulty with the schoolwork. "Look, I just don't get this stuff," he would remark, looking down at the finance books as if they were written in a foreign language and scratching his head. "You will," he said, "just dissect it into smaller parts. Avoid trying to take it all in at once." Mark was laid back and had a quick smile that brightened the dreary late-night study sessions. We clicked and spoke about everything from music to our favorite TV series. He was grateful for my assistance. Before long, those study sessions evolved into movie evenings and coffee dates. We were both giggling over cheap beer at a college party one evening. He jokingly nudged me with his elbow and said, "You know, Em, I've always wondered why someone as smart as you hangs out with a dunce like me." I fired back, elbowing him in the process. "Guess I have a thing for lost causes," I said. Something about that night seemed different, and we both laughed. Perhaps it was the excitement of the gathering or simply too much alcohol, but I noticed that my perspective on him had changed. Together, we staggered out of the party, half dancing, partly walking down the street, leaning on one another. "So, what are your thoughts? Do you want to do this on a regular basis?" Mark's eyes were serious, but his words were clumsy. I recall laughing loudly throughout the silent night. "Are you asking me out?" He answered, "Yeah, I guess I am," in a tone that challenged me, as if he were daring me to refuse. I said, "All right, you've got yourself a deal." And we shook hands, completing our silly agreement with a high five that resulted in us walking hand in hand. With Mark, everything seemed effortless and natural, like putting on a pair of old, cozy pants. Together, we graduated from college. He was pleased to be done, and I had my degree, which was meant to open doors. Our bond was based on a profound friendship, the type you don't often find, rather than merely love. I had a fairly successful start to my job when we were married. My flair for statistics plus a little effort helped me snag a terrific job right out of college. The benefits were much better than the money. However, Mark was not as fortunate. Like a pinball, he bounced around job interviews, each time returning home a little less confident than the one before. He was lounging on the couch, looking aimlessly at some job listings on his laptop one evening when I arrived home late. "Any luck today?" I asked, kicking off my shoes and dumping my bag. He looked up, a phony smile that stopped short of his eyes. "Nah, same old, same old." "I guess I'm too stupid." "Hey, stop talking like way. You're just going through a difficult time." In an attempt to impart some of my positivity to him, I grasped his hand. "Hey, how about you stop doing this? Let's go get my treat, a bite." Mark sighed and shut off his laptop. Of course, why not? It's not as if I have any upcoming interviews. When we initially moved in together, we would often go to a little cafe around the block, which is where we ended up. Mark's attitude appeared to improve as we moved into our typical booth. Our order was taken by the middle-aged waitress, who had a direct demeanor. While chewing her gum, she inquired, "The usual for you, too." Mark smiled. "Yes, Judy, and don't stop serving coffee. It has been a typical day." "Coming right up, hun," she winked in response. I observed Mark playing with the sugar packets while we waited for our meal, lining them up and toppling them like dominoes. Abruptly, he replied, "You know, maybe this is a sign. Perhaps these corporate jobs aren't for me. Perhaps I should think creatively." Curious, I leaned closer. "Like what?" "I'm not sure. Something practical. Something tangible, rather than merely shuffle papers and appease superiors." "You'd be great at that," I said, meaning every word. "You're good with people. Maybe something in sales." Mark chuckled, his eyes lighting up a bit. That might be a good idea. The conversation drifted as our food arrived, but I could tell something had sparked in Mark. For the first time in months, he seemed to consider the possibilities rather than dwell on the failures. It took a good while, but finally he snagged a position, not the dream job by any stretch, and the paycheck. Well, it was nearly half of what I was pulling in. I didn't mind the disparity. I was just glad he found something. But Mark took it hard. You could see it ate at him, being the one who brought less to the table. "I just never thought I'd be the one being supported," he admitted one night, his voice low, almost drowned out by the hum of the microwave in our tiny kitchen. "Hey, it's us against the bills, not you against me." I tried to reassure him, passing him a beer. "We're a team, right?" "Yeah, a team," he echoed, but his half-smile didn't reach his eyes. Over time, though, he seemed to get used to the setup. The weight of paying rent, groceries, and everything in between fell on my shoulders, and I handled it without a fuss. I even splurged on him now and then, fancy gadgets, the kind of clothes he wouldn't buy for himself. Mark got cozy with this arrangement, real cozy. He started pointing out stuff in stores, saying, "Hey, that would look great on me." I laughed it off, clouded by love, thinking this was just playful banter between us. My colleagues at work saw it differently. "He's getting a bit too comfortable, don't you think?" They'd hint after I shared stories over lunch. I shrugged off their concerns, figuring they just didn't see the full picture of our marriage. He's been through a rough patch. It's my turn to spoil him a bit. I defend him, keeping my tone light. Just when I thought we had our lives on a steady track, the unexpected whacked us upside the head. The investment firm where I was making waves suddenly crashed, bankrupt, out of the blue. I came home that day, my head spinning, papers from HR clutched in my shaky hands. "Mark, you won't believe what happened," I said as soon as I walked through the door. I was met with a sight of him on the sofa, gaming controller in hand, mid-game. He paused his game and looked up, brows knitted. "What's up, babe?" "The company, they're done. Bankrupt. I'm jobless." He sat up straighter, the seriousness of the situation cutting through the usual homecoming chit-chat. "What? But you were just talking about a promotion last week." "Yeah, well, so much for that." I tossed the papers on the coffee table, a mix of severance info and legal jargon. "Everything's gone to hell, just like that." Mark set his controller down and came over to me, his expression a mix of concern and disbelief. "Sarah, that's crazy. What are you going to do?" I sank into the couch, the weight of the news anchoring me down. "I don't know. I need to start looking, I guess. But who's going to hire someone from a tanked firm? It's like I've got the plague now." He rubbed my back, trying to be the rock I needed. "Then you'll find something. You're brilliant. Any company would be lucky to have you." But weeks turned into months, and every interview ended with some version of "we'll be in touch," which really meant don't hold your breath. The rejections piled up, slamming me with doubt and worry. One evening, after yet another thanks, but no thanks, I vented to Mark over dinner. "It's like I'm toxic, Mark." Today one guy actually said, "Sorry, but we can't risk someone associated with that kind of failure," as if I personally ran the company into the ground. Mark shook his head, stabbing at his food. "That's bull. They don't know what they're missing." "Yeah, well, apparently they think they're dodging a bullet," I muttered, pushing my own food around my plate. Then the bills started to grow, a monstrous pile that seemed to taunt us from the kitchen counter. Each envelope was a reminder that my savings wouldn't last forever. Mark tried to pick up extra hours, but it wasn't enough to keep up. One night, as I was crunching numbers, trying to make sense of our dwindling finances, Mark came into the kitchen with a sheepish look on his face. "So, about the bills." I didn't even look up. "What about them?" He shuffled his feet, a sure sign he was nervous. "Well, it's just, I'm not pulling in much. Maybe we should cut back some more. Maybe we could move to a smaller place or sell the car." I stared at him, the reality of our situation washing over me in a cold wave. "We're really in it, aren't we?" Mark nodded, coming over to wrap his arms around me. "We'll figure it out, Em. We always do." Weeks of fruitless job hunting ground me down, each day chipping away at my savings and hope. The money was running out fast, and Mark, who had grown used to a comfortable life, now shouldered all our bills. This shift brought out a side of him I'd never seen before. One night, he exploded. "You're just sitting around all day doing nothing. I'm out there busting my ass. And for what? To come home to a freeloader." His words stung. "Freeloader? Really, Mark? Who do you think kept us in a flat all these years?" I shot back, my voice sharp with hurt and anger. He just scoffed, shaking his head. "Yeah, well, past. What are you doing now?" Nothing. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't the man I married. But before I could gather my thoughts to respond, the real blow came just a few days later. I came home early to grab some documents I needed for yet another potential job lead. As I opened the door, I froze. There was Mark in our living room, cozy with a woman I'd never seen. She was draped on his arm, laughing up at him like she owned the place. Mark straightened up, clearing his throat. "This is Anna. She's going to be my wife." The woman, Anna, looked me over with a smug grin. He meets someone young and beautiful if he's going to spend his money, not someone who can't even keep a job. They laughed together, a sound that burned into my memory. I felt my heart shatter, rage and disbelief swirling into a toxic cloud in my chest. Then Mark did the unthinkable. He pulled out a stack of papers from behind him. "Here, divorce papers." I think it's time you moved on, Sarah. Without saying another word, I took the papers. My hand shook as I signed them, each stroke of the pen severing the last ties I had to the man I once loved. I packed my things, my movements robotic as I zipped up my suitcase. Mark and Anna didn't even pause their celebration. The contrast between their laughter and the tight, painful lump in my throat was too much. Walking out of that apartment, suitcase in hand, felt like stepping into a void. I had no job, no husband, and suddenly no home. The morning after I left Mark, I woke up early, feeling displaced but determined to start over. I had spent the night at a cheap motel, the kind where you pay cash and no one asks questions. I knew I needed a plan fast. After a stale coffee and a dry muffin from the motel's vending machine, I walked the streets aimlessly. At first, then I remembered a beauty salon nearby, a place I used to frequent back in better days. The owner, Linda, had always been kind to me. Maybe, just maybe, she had some work. Anything, really. Linda was at the counter, her back turned, stocking some shelves. "Can I help you?" she called out without looking. "Linda, it's Sarah. I was wondering if you had any work available, anything at all," I said, my voice a mix of hope and desperation. She turned around, her face lighting up with recognition, then concern. "Sarah, honey, what happened? You look like you've been through the ringer." I sighed, the story spilling out of me. The job loss, Mark's betrayal, the divorce. She listened, her expression softening with each word I said. "Oh, sweetie, I'm so sorry. Let's see what we can do for you." She pondered for a moment, tapping a finger on her lips. "You know, I need someone to help manage the front desk, answer phones, schedule appointments. You think you could handle that?" I nodded eagerly. "Yes, absolutely. I'd be grateful for any opportunity, Linda." She smiled, her warm, reassuring self. "Good. Why don't you start tomorrow? We'll figure out the rest as we go. And hey, about a place to stay. The apartment above the shop is empty. It's not much, but it's clean and safe. You can stay there for half the rent until you're back on your feet." I was overwhelmed, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "Linda, I thank you. This means so much to me." "None of that now," she waved off my thanks. "You'd do the same in my shoes. Let's not make it a big deal. Just be here at 8 tomorrow, bright and early." The next few weeks were a blur of learning and adjusting. Linda showed me the ropes, and I picked up the nuances of the beauty industry quicker than I thought. It was like I was slowly piecing myself back together, finding a new purpose in a place I hadn't expected. Mark and my old life seemed like a distant memory, a bad dream that had loosened its grip on me. I worked hard, stayed late when needed, and slowly I began to feel whole again. But it wasn't just about surviving anymore. I was starting to thrive. Linda noticed too. "Sarah, you've really turned this place around," she said one evening as we were closing up. "I'm thinking about expanding, opening another location. What do you think about running this one for me?" The offer took my breath away. "Really, Linda? Are you serious?" "As serious as a heart attack," she chuckled. "Think it over, no rush." As I walked up to my little apartment above the shop, I realized that this right here was my fresh start, my chance to rebuild, not just my career but my life. Running the beauty salon started to feel like second nature. Every day I put in all I had, and Linda noticed. One morning, as we were gearing up for another busy day, she came in with her usual spark. "Morning, Em. How's our little empire doing?" "Packed with appointments, booming." I replied, flipping through the day's bookings. "We might even need to think about hiring more hands soon." "That's what I like to hear," she said, clapping her hands with excitement. Actually, that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about today. Oh, what's up? I asked, curious about the tone in her voice. Linda motioned toward her office. Let's step into my lair for a sec. Once we were settled behind closed doors, Linda leaned forward, all business. Look, Em, you've made this place shine. I've been thinking a lot about how we can grow, not just here, but really expand our reach. I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. Are you talking about opening another location? Not just another salon, Em, I'm talking big. I'm planning a whole network of salons, and I want you in on it. Not just as a manager, but as a co-owner. We'd split everything 50-50. Her words hit me like a wave. Co-owner. I echoed, the weight of the offer sinking in. Yes, Linda nodded firmly. I've seen what you can do, and I trust you. You're ready for this, and I want us to tackle it as partners. What do you say? The possibility of stepping up like this was both thrilling and daunting. Linda, I'm honored and yeah, a bit freaked out. Linda laughed, that hearty sound that always put me at ease. Good. A little fear keeps you sharp. Think about it, but I'm serious. We could make a real go of this. We hashed out some preliminary ideas right there, brainstorming into the afternoon. The thought of co-owning a business was huge, but with Linda by my side, it felt possible. In the next few weeks, I dove into preparations, hiring, training new staff, and overseeing the salon operations became part of a larger plan. Our clients noticed the positive changes, and the buzz was infectious. Linda and I spent evenings at a local cafe, laptops open, plants sprawling across the table. We talked leases, decor, branding, every detail of our expansion. Finally, the day came to announce our plans to the staff. Everyone gathered around, excited and a bit anxious about the future. Ladies and gentlemen, Linda started, her voice booming with pride. Thanks to your hard work, and especially Sarah's leadership, we're expanding. And Sarah here isn't just going to be your boss. She's going to be my partner in this venture. We're in this together. The team cheered, and I felt a swell of pride and determination. This was my shot, our shot, to build something lasting. It had been 7 years since the divorce, and life had moved on. I was in one of my salons, chatting with Mrs. Peterson, an elderly client who loved getting her hair done here every month. We were laughing about something trivial when the door swung open, and there he was, my ex-husband Mark with Anna, the same woman he had left me for. I stiffened, but before I could say a word, Mark burst out laughing loud enough for everyone in the salon to hear. Look at this. Sarah has become just a simple hairdresser. What a waste of all that fancy education. Anna chimed in, her voice dripping with disdain. Yeah, what a total loser. Guess the high-flying job didn't work out, huh? The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. I felt every eye in the place on me, waiting to see how I'd respond. But before I could gather my thoughts, Mrs. Peterson stood up from her chair, her cape still draped around her. She pointed a manicured finger at them, her voice sharp as an attack. You two ought to shut your mouths. This woman here, she waved her hand at me, owns not only this salon, but a whole chain of them. She was just named one of the most successful young entrepreneurs in the country. Mark's laughter died in his throat. He looked like he'd been slapped. Anna's face went from mocking to shocked in an instant. And another thing, Mrs. Peterson continued, her eyes narrowing. I live next door to you clowns, Mark. You're hardly ever sober, and you get fired from your job so often, it's a wonder you have any work at all. Mark's face turned beet red from embarrassment or anger. I couldn't tell. He grabbed Anna's arm, muttering something under his breath about leaving. As they headed towards the door, Anna suddenly whirled around and stormed back in, Mark trailing helplessly behind her. "I want my hair done here, and I want you to do it, Sarah," Anna declared, standing defiantly in the middle of the salon. Her voice was loud, her tone brazen, as if challenging me directly. I raised an eyebrow, taking in her audacious demand. "Sure, I can do that. It'll be $250 for a cut and style with me." Her confidence wavered, her eyes widening at the quote. "What? I'm not going to spend a quarter of my salary on some hairstyle." Mark, looking defeated and embarrassed, tried to pull her away again. "Come on, Anna, let's just go." This time, Anna continued to mumble under her breath about the pricing until they departed permanently. Through the glass, I observed them boarding an ancient vehicle that appeared to have seen better days. The episode with Mark became simply another narrative that was added to the rich tapestry of my life's unexpected turns as the days stretched into weeks. The salons were flourishing, and every day I had more reasons to look ahead joyfully than backward regretfully. As I was setting up the new range of organic hair care products on the shelves one clear morning, Linda entered the room with what I knew was yet another brilliant idea shining in her eyes. "I've been considering ways to grow our brand. How would you feel about establishing a training academy in the salon itself? We might impart our knowledge to the upcoming generation of stylists." I hesitated, thinking about it. Like most of Linda's ideas, it was audacious, but it made logic. That sounds fantastic. With my head already spinning with the potential, I said, "We have the space, and it could really set us apart from the competition." Just what I thought. Linda's excitement was contagious as she clapped her hands. "And you should be in charge of this initiative. You're skilled at this, and I have total faith in your judgment." I was both excited and intimidated by the prospect of spearheading such a big new endeavor, but I felt up to the task. "I wish I could, Linda. It truly means a lot that you have faith in me." For the following 3 hours, we drew up the possible layout of the institution, talking about everything from curriculum to licensing. As we conversed, I became aware of how far I had gone from feeling hopeless and isolated to directing the course of a company I co-owned. Mrs. Harper, one of our frequent customers, came up to me later that day as I was cleaning up after a hectic afternoon. Since we first established this facility, she had been visiting the salon and had always demonstrated an interest in the business side of things. With an eager tone, she started, "Sarah, I've been hearing great things about what you're planning. As you are aware, my granddaughter has a strong interest in beauty and will shortly graduate from high school. She might be able to enroll at your academy." I answered with real pleasure, "That would be wonderful, Mrs. Harper. Once everything is in order, we would be happy to assist her in beginning her adventure. Let's see to it that she is among the first pupils." Mrs. Harper smiled. "I'm grateful, Sarah. She is inspired by young ladies like you. She tells about how you succeeded after turning things around." I felt a wonderful feeling of pride and duty when I heard that. "Where we can, we try to inspire," I smiled in response. As I secured the salon that night, I contemplated the future. There was a great deal of unrealized promise. Although it hadn't been an easy journey, each obstacle had made me stronger, and each failure had given me a good lesson. While I was out on a business trip overseas, my husband, Lucas, called me in the middle of the night. I was working in another country. When he spoke, it was like a truck hit me. "Hey, I want a divorce." I became numb. I was able to utter the question, "What?" I had always worried that this day may come, but I never imagined that he would bring it up while I was so far away. I was completely unprepared for it. "What exactly do you know? Would you be able to clarify this in detail?" I inquired, having a trembling voice. A nasty laugh came out of Lucas's mouth. The fact that I have a mistress is probably something you haven't noticed. More attractive and younger than you are, she is. Together, we even have a child of our own. In order for me to be with them, I would like for you to divorce me." I remained mute. He continued, seeming as if he was attempting to make his argument more clear. While pausing, he said, "I've already sold the house and the car," and it was obvious that he was waiting for me to respond. I inhaled deeply and then spoke to him in a concise and composed manner. "Okay." When I reached the other end of the telephone, there was complete and utter quiet. "Huh." Lucas mumbled, his expression rather bewildered. It is possible that he anticipated that I would start crying or beg him to stay, but I did not. For quite some time, I had been making preparations for the chance that this would occur. I was not shaken by his statements, as he most likely anticipated I would be. When I arrived back at my house a few days later, Lucas was already at the airport, waiting for me with a frantic expression on his face. But before we get to that, allow me to present you with some information about me. This is Jenna, my name. I have been a homemaker for the past 35 years. My family was typical of those belonging to the middle class. I began taking Italian classes while I was in elementary school, since I have always had a strong interest in studying the language. At the time I was in middle school, I also had a talent for English. Even while I was still in high school, I had the opportunity to stay with a host family in Italy. That was the moment when I first began to fantasize of working for a multinational corporation. I was able to transform that desire into a reality by enrolling in the business school at a prestigious university. During my stay there, I went to Italy to pursue my education and put in a lot of effort to achieve my objectives. The process of looking for a job was not simple, but I was overjoyed when I was offered a position at the worldwide firm that was my second option. I was really proud of my family, and my sister even complimented me by saying, "Jenna, you are incredible. You have our utmost admiration. Please be careful and give it your all." Their assistance was of the utmost importance to me. My new job was challenging to begin with. My expectations were not met by the level of difficulty of the task, and despite the fact that the corporation treats its employees with respect, the expectations were extremely high. I was in my early 20s and had very little experience, so I frequently had to put in long hours at work. My coworkers and bosses were encouraging, and most importantly, I discovered that I was able to take pleasure in working in the position that I had always envisioned for myself. After working hard for several years, my efforts were finally noticed. I started getting more important tasks, and my friends often said things like, "You're on your way to becoming a successful businesswoman," or "You're so cool, such a strong woman." But despite how people saw me, I had a soft spot for cute things. I loved collecting items of my favorite characters and even slept with stuffed animals. I wanted a pet, but my busy job made it impossible, so on my days off, I'd go to cat cafes to relax. At work, I kept a professional and sharp image, never showing the softer side of me. Maybe it was because I was so busy that I craved comfort in those little things. As I got older, many of my friends started getting married and having kids. At weddings, people would tell me, "You should get married soon too." I'd laugh it off and say, "I'm too busy with work." The truth was, I didn't feel romantic toward anyone at work or among my business contacts, and I didn't have time to meet new people. I wondered if I was meant to stay single forever. Back then, I thought that was okay. I liked focusing on my career, and it didn't seem like a bad way to live. Then one day, I went to yet another friend's wedding. I applauded the couple as usual, but this time I felt a bit uneasy. I was already past 30. If I wanted to get married, I needed to start looking for someone soon. The reception moved to a bar later that evening, and I found myself sitting alone at the counter with a drink. I watched the other guests laughing and the bride and groom smiling shyly. Suddenly, a voice broke through my thoughts. "Are you alone? Can I sit here?" The voice was smooth and pleasant, and it caught me off guard. "Oh, sure," I said, turning to look at the man. He was about my height, tall for a woman, and seemed younger than me. His face was average in a good way, not quite what I expected from his lovely voice. "Are you here for the wedding?" he asked. "Yes, I'm a friend of the bride," I replied. "I'm a high school friend of the groom. Want to have a drink together?" I nodded, and we started talking over drinks. "Wow, you work at that international company. I've heard about it. That's amazing. To someone like me, just a salaryman at a small company, you feel like you're from a different world," the man said. He introduced himself as Lucas, and I found him easy to talk to. Before we parted, we exchanged contact information and started meeting up after that. Lucas was 3 years younger than me and worked in sales at a small company. He had a gentle and sweet personality, was a great listener, and knew how to give genuine compliments. I enjoyed spending time with him. After a few dates, Lucas confessed his feelings for me, and I happily said yes. Even though his yearly income was less than a third of mine, it didn't bother me at all back then. The more time we spent together, the more I found Lucas adorable. I didn't see him as super cool or dependable, and maybe that was why I never felt disappointed in him. Instead, I liked his cute and earnest nature. When he said things like, "I'd love to try your cooking," I couldn't resist and happily cooked for him. After dating for about 1.5 years, Lucas surprised me with a ring. "I love how you're always so cool, but you have this cute side too. If you're okay with it, will you marry me?" he asked. I was caught off guard but thrilled. I accepted the ring with a smile. "Thank you, Lucas. Let's take care of each other as husband and wife." Lucas was over the moon, practically jumping for joy, and his happiness made me laugh. Afterward, we met each other's families to share the news. Lucas's parents were kind and simple people who happily blessed our marriage. My family was supportive as well, with my parents telling him, "Please take good care of our daughter." My sister, who was already married, quietly teased me, saying, "He seems like just the type you'd choose, knowing your soft spot for cute things. But don't spoil him too much, okay?" I laughed and replied, I know." And just like that, life with Lucas began. Since we were starting fresh, I decided to buy a condo. It was a big decision, but I thought it would be a good investment for the future. I chose a slightly bigger place, thinking ahead in case we had kids. I believed our happy married life was about to begin, but reality hit me hard. Lucas didn't know how to do any housework. He had lived with his parents until our marriage and had always relied on his mom for everything. I tried to be patient and said, "Lucas, now that we're married, we should share the housework. If you don't know how, I can teach you." But Lucas frowned and said, "What now? Now that we're married, isn't it your job to handle the housework?" I looked at him and replied firmly, "No, Lucas. Housework is something we share. I have a busy job. It'll be a problem if you can't even handle housework. Come on, get up. I'll teach you how to use the washing machine." I spent time teaching Lucas the basics of housework. Even though he wasn't interested at first, Lucas started doing some cleaning and laundry. However, his efforts were always half-hearted, and I had to redo most of what he did. As for cooking, it was a disaster, so I handled it by preparing meals ahead of time. I didn't want to discourage him, so I made an effort to praise him even for the little he did. I thought encouragement might help, but instead of improving, Lucas began doing less and less. He knew I'd pick up the slack, so he started taking advantage of my patience. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. Lucas, you need to stop relying on me so much. Learn to do housework properly. I'm busy with work and have business trips. You need to take care of things too. Lucas frowned and said, "What's with you? You've changed since we got married. You're always nagging. You make good money, so if you're going to complain so much, why not just hire someone to do the housework?" I was stunned. Yes, I earned a decent income, but spending money carelessly would drain our savings. Despite talking to him about it multiple times, Lucas refused to change. Then about a year after we got married, I came home to find Lucas sitting pale-faced in the living room. "Lucas, what's wrong? You don't look good," I asked. He sighed and admitted, "My company is going bankrupt because of the recession. I'll be out of a job next month." "What?" I was shocked. Although Lucas had been working overtime more often lately, I had no idea his company was in such bad shape. "So what are you going to do? Have you started looking for new jobs?" "I'll think about it later," he replied. "I'm tired and stressed. I just need some time." I decided to give him space, thinking he needed time to process everything. But after his company shut down and he no longer had work, Lucas spent all day playing video games. He didn't do any housework, and when I came home late, I'd find him sitting in front of the TV, completely absorbed in his games. This went on for months. My patience wore thin, and one day I finally said, "Lucas, haven't you rested enough? Don't you think it's time to start working again?" Lucas didn't even look up. "I want to think carefully about my next job," he said. "You know, at my old job, I was just being used. Next time, I want a job where I can achieve something meaningful, like self-realization or whatever." Even though I wanted to say, "What nonsense," I knew I couldn't force Lucas to work. So even after his unemployment benefits ran out, I kept supporting him. One day, as he was glued to his video games, I sarcastically said, "If you like games so much, why not try streaming? You might even make some pocket money." To my surprise, Lucas's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea. You're so smart, Jenna. I'll give it a shot." "I have a good feeling about this," he said, full of enthusiasm. For someone who had been doing nothing for months, it was a sudden change, and I wasn't sure if it was a good or bad thing. "Then you'll need a PC and streaming equipment," he added casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I blinked in shock. "What?" "I don't have any savings, but I'm serious about this," he explained. "So please buy it for me." Reluctantly, I bought everything he needed. Deep down, I thought this would fail, and he'd finally realize he needed to get a proper job. But a few months later, things took a surprising turn. Lucas became popular as a game streamer under the name Jay. To my shock, he even started ranking on charts. Fans online left positive comments like, "His voice is so nice," and "It's funny how bad he is at games." He managed to attract both men and women to his streams. He partially hid his face on camera and, of course, never mentioned that he was married. "See, I told you I could succeed when I tried." "The world finally recognizes my talent," Lucas declared, full of himself. Despite his success, he didn't show a shred of gratitude for all the support I had given him, or for buying the equipment that started it all. Still, I approached him calmly. "Lucas, I'm happy you're doing well, but don't you think you should contribute some of your earnings to our household expenses? It's been a while since your unemployment benefits ended, and I've been covering everything." Lucas looked at me as if I had said something absurd. "Why should I? You make enough to handle the living expenses. Let's just keep our finances separate." I was stunned. True to his words, Lucas kept all his streaming income to himself. By now, the kind and considerate man. The man I had dated was long gone. He had become completely selfish and dependent on me. Around that time, I bought a car on loan, a luxury car I had always dreamed of owning. I only drove it on weekends, but I cherished it like a treasure. One day, Lucas casually said, "Hey, let me drive your car." I raised an eyebrow. "You work from home. You don't need a car for streaming. Why would you need to drive it?" "We're married, so it's fine." "Come on, let me," he insisted. Eventually, I gave in and handed him the keys, though it didn't sit right with me. After that, Lucas started going out whenever he wanted during weekdays while I was at work. His popularity as a streamer kept growing, and he gained a huge following. He also began living a flashy lifestyle, dressing in expensive designer clothes. I felt sad seeing how much he had changed, but since we were still married, I continued our life together, hoping things might get better. As we entered the 5th year of our marriage, my career was thriving. I was given more responsibilities at work and often had to travel overseas for business trips. Sometimes I'd be away for a few days, other times for up to 4 weeks. Each time I came home, the house was a complete mess, like a garbage dump. Lucas spent all his time locked in his room streaming. He still depended on me for everything and never helped out around the house. We barely talked anymore, and I found myself wondering, why am I still married to him? That's when I started collecting evidence for a divorce and making plans to move on. One day, I told Lucas, "I'll be going overseas again tomorrow for a 3-week business trip. Take care." He didn't even look up from his phone. I left for my trip and threw myself into my work. On the 11th night of my trip, I got a call from Lucas. "Hello, Lucas. Do you know what time it is here?" "It's midnight," I said, half asleep. Then he dropped a bomb. "Hey, Jenna, I want a divorce." I froze. "What?" I managed to say. I had suspected this might happen one day, but I never thought he'd bring it up while I was halfway across the world. "What do you mean? Can you explain properly?" I asked, trying to stay calm. Lucas chuckled. "You probably haven't noticed, but I have a mistress. She's younger and prettier than you. We even have a child together." I didn't say anything, so he kept going. "I want you to divorce me so I can live with my mistress and our child. Oh, and I've already sold the house and car." He sounded so confident, like he expected me to crumble. But I didn't. I simply said, "Okay." "What?" Lucas stammered. He must have thought I'd cry or beg him to stay. He had no idea I had been mentally preparing for this moment for a long time. "You want a divorce, right?" "Fine," I said calmly. "There's a completed divorce paper in the living room drawer. You can sign it and submit it yourself." Lucas was taken aback. "You had divorce papers ready." "Well, thanks for making it easy. Goodbye then. Enjoy being the woman your husband left behind," he said smugly. I held back a laugh. Sure. Well, I'm going back to sleep. Goodbye, Lucas." Then I hung up and immediately blocked his number. I called my sister and asked her for a favor, then went to bed and slept peacefully until morning. The next day, I focused on my work and stayed busy until my trip was over. Finally, it was time to go home. The business class seat provided by my company was so comfortable that I fell asleep during the flight. When I woke up, I stretched and thought, that was a good nap. No jet lag for me this time. I'm ready to get back to normal life. After landing, I collected my luggage and headed toward the airport lobby. As I reached the exit, I suddenly heard someone shouting, "Hey, Jenna." I turned to see Lucas running toward me, looking panicked. "Oh, why are you here?" I asked, surprised. I don't remember asking for a ride. Lucas didn't answer directly. Instead, he started ranting, his words spilling out in a rush. What have you done? The car, the house. Because of you, I stepped back, startled by his strange behavior. I don't understand what you're talking about, I said calmly. Can I go now? I'm tired. I yawned and tried to walk past him, but he blocked my way. Wait a minute. Listen to me, he shouted. So I stopped and crossed my arms, waiting for him to explain. First, I submitted the divorce papers after you told me to, he began. I see, I replied casually, scrolling through my phone and barely paying attention. Are you even listening? Lucas snapped. When I went home to meet with a real estate agent about selling the house, there was a lock on the door. I couldn't get in. Then when I tried to use the car, there was an anti-theft lock on the tires, and I couldn't drive it. I tried calling you, but you didn't answer. You blocked my number. I let out a small sigh. Yes, I blocked your calls. And what about it? Lucas's face turned red with anger. Did you put the lock on the house and the tire locks on the car? How did you even do that when you were overseas? I shrugged. I asked my sister to handle it. His eyes widened in shock. Your sister? Yes, I said, keeping my tone light. You said you sold the house and car, remember? But when my sister checked, both were still there. So I guess you were just bluffing. You were probably only getting estimates from agents, right? Lucas's face turned even redder, and he stammered, well, yeah, that's true. But I was about to sell them. I couldn't help but sigh as Lucas continued ranting. No, Lucas, you couldn't have sold the house or car, even if you tried. Both are in my name, and all the important documents needed to sell them are at my parents' house. Lucas froze, his face blank. What? He muttered. Did you really think anyone could just sell a house or car by saying, I'm selling this, without being the legal owner? Obviously, they need proof of ownership and the proper paperwork, right? I said, shaking my head. Lucas looked completely stunned, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. You've always dumped all the complicated paperwork on me during our marriage, so of course you don't even understand something this basic, I added with a hint of disgust. Lucas's face twisted in frustration. If you knew they couldn't be sold, why did you put locks on the house and the car? Because of you, I couldn't get into the house or use the car. It was awful. I sighed again. Why would I let someone who cheated, had a mistress, and demanded a divorce have free access to my house? Same with the car. They're in my name, so I just secured them for my own peace of mind. Lucas glared at me, his eyes bloodshot. What's with that attitude? I can't believe you're doing all this just because I couldn't sell your stupid property. You're so not cute. That's what I hated about you. Always acting like you can handle everything yourself. So arrogant for a woman. I stayed calm and replied, oh, really? Then why did you marry me in the first place? Lucas snorted. Obviously for your money. The fact that you worked at an international company and made good money, that was the only reason you were worth marrying. His words dripped with malice, but they didn't affect me. I just looked at him thoughtfully. Come to think of it, there wasn't much benefit in me marrying you either. Lucas's face turned red with anger. Don't act all high and mighty. I'm the one leaving you. My mistress is way better than you, hundreds of times cuter, and she even gave me a child. Doesn't that make you feel inferior? She's a better woman than you'll ever be. I couldn't help but smile faintly. Better than me, huh? What's so funny? Lucas snapped. Still smiling, I reached into my bag and pulled out a photo. Is this your mistress? I asked, showing him a picture of a young, attractive woman in her early 20s. Lucas's eyes darted nervously as he recognized her. You knew about Miriam," he stammered. I gave him a sweet smile. "Of course, you're not the only one who wanted a divorce. I've been gathering evidence for a while now." "You're so careless, Lucas. Didn't you realize the dash cam records the interior too?" I said, watching his face go pale. But I didn't stop there. Once I saw when you were meeting her from the dash cam footage, it was easy. I hired a private investigator to gather more evidence. It didn't take long to identify your mistress. Lucas's face froze, and I added, I was a little surprised to find out she was already pregnant, though. He stood there, stunned, before finally blurting out, "Don't do anything to her. She's been through a lot after giving birth, and she's young. She doesn't have money, and she didn't even know I was married." I raised an eyebrow, pretending to look concerned. "Wow, you're really defending her. You must love Miriam a lot." "Of course I do," he said firmly. "She's pure, sweet, and my soulmate. I'll protect her and our child no matter what." As Lucas puffed up with self-righteousness, I quietly took out my phone and played a video. It was dash cam footage from my car showing Lucas driving with a heavily pregnant Miriam sitting in the passenger seat. "Thanks for taking me on a drive today," Miriam said in a sugary voice. The food was delicious, too. Lucas's face in the video lit up with pride. "You're so good at saying thank you." "What a good girl," he said smugly. "I want to marry you soon," Miriam pouted, crossing her arms. "Really, then hurry up and divorce that old hag already. I want you to be my husband before the baby comes, okay?" Lucas's voice in the video reassured her. "Just wait a little longer. I'll handle everything while she's on her overseas business trip. Then we'll be together, me, you, and the baby. We'll live comfortably with the money from selling the house and car." I paused the video and looked at Lucas. "So Miriam didn't know you were married, huh? She seems pretty aware to me." Lucas was pale and sweating. Before he could say anything, I dropped another bombshell. "And about her being pure, you might want to take a closer look." "What are you trying to say?" he shouted. I took out a stack of photos and scattered them on the floor. Lucas's face grew paler with each picture he looked at. What? What is this? Who are these men?" The photos showed Miriam with different men, holding hands, entering hotels, and even getting prenatal checkups with a man who wasn't Lucas. "That's who Miriam really is," I said calmly. "She targets popular streamers for relationships. Let me guess, you started out as a streamer, and she was just another fan, right?" Lucas was frozen, unable to speak. He fell to his knees, clutching one of Miriam's photos, his face blank with shock. Looking at him pitifully, I said in a soft, almost sympathetic voice, "You really are something else, Lucas, planning to raise a child who might not even be yours." I said flatly, "Can I leave now? We're basically strangers at this point. There's nothing left to discuss, is there?" Suddenly, Lucas snapped out of his stupor and started yelling. "If you hadn't shown me all this, I could have stayed happy. How cruel can you be? Because of you, I can't trust anything anymore." I couldn't help but sigh, feeling nothing but annoyance. "That's not my problem, Lucas. Do you even hear yourself? Whatever. Do what you want." He sneered and said, "Fine. Even if I divorce you and leave Miriam, I'll still be fine. I've got over 3 million followers as a streamer, and I'm earning way more than you now. Too bad for you, you're losing a famous streamer as a husband. Serves you right." At that, I smiled sweetly and said, "Why don't you check your phone?" Lucas froze for a second before pulling out his phone with a smug look. As he unlocked it, his face turned pale. What's this? Over 1,000 notifications. What's going on? He frantically scrolled through his screen, his expression growing more horrified by the second. Finally, he looked up at me, trembling. Jenna, you did. With the biggest smile of the day, I said, oh, I did. I exposed everything online, how you were married, had a mistress and a love child, and how horribly you treated me. Lucas let out a scream that echoed through the airport lobby, causing people around us to stare. He completely lost it. What have you done to me? My reputation, my following, my whole career is ruined. Look at these messages. They're calling me the worst man ever, saying I betrayed everyone. I casually held up my phone, tilting my head playfully. Oh, by the way, this whole scene is being live-streamed. Wow, look at that, over 5 million viewers. They're loving it. Lucas's face twisted in panic, and he lunged for my phone. Give me that. But it was far too late. His ugly words and breakdown were already out there for everyone to see. As he collapsed onto the floor of the airport, rolling around in a fit of rage and despair, I calmly walked past him and headed toward the taxi stand, feeling lighter than I had in years. Lucas faced intense backlash online. His entire career crumbled. His success had been built on the image of a sweet, clumsy single man with a charming voice, a persona that attracted countless female fans. But now that image was completely shattered. The fact that Lucas was secretly married shocked his female fans, who felt betrayed. But the scandal didn't stop there. News of his mistress and love child caused even his male fans to turn on him, calling him unfaithful. The story spiraled, packed with juicy details. Hiding his marriage, cheating on his wife, and then finding out the child might not even be his. It became a hot topic online, drawing attention even from people who had never heard of Lucas before. He was the talk of the internet for all the wrong reasons. Although Lucas posted a carefully worded apology on social media, the backlash didn't let up. His subscriber count plummeted, and eventually he had no choice but to stop streaming altogether. Sometime later, as I was leaving my office building after work, I saw Lucas waiting for me. His face was streaked with tears as he begged, Jenna, I can't dream anymore. I can't even go outside without people staring or mocking me. Please help me. You're the only one I've ever truly loved. Let's get back together and be husband and wife again. I looked at him coldly and said, if you keep stalking me, I'll call the police. I had my final encounter with Lucas at that point. After some time had passed, I learned through a word of mouth that the child that Miriam had was not actually Lucas's child. It produced even more turmoil, and the two of them ended their relationship as a result of the revelation of the truth. In no way did I absolve either of them of responsibility. I insisted that both parties pay me compensation. While Miriam was forced to borrow money from her parents in order to cover her portion of the payment, Lucas sacrificed the last of his funds in order to pay me. As for Miriam, she made an effort to convince the person who was the biological father of her child, who was also a streamer, to marry her, but he flatly refused her proposal. Having exhausted all other possibilities, she went back to live with her strict parents and is currently bringing up the child in their home. Even if everything is going on, I sincerely hope that the child will grow up to be healthy and happy. Lucas's predicament continued to deteriorate. After he had paid me, he was left in a state of abject despair. In order to compensate him for the damage he had caused to their reputation, the businesses with whom he had collaborated demanded damages. When he sought assistance from his family, his parents, who were responsible and moral, severed all ties with him because they were embarrassed by his behavior. Now, according to what I've been told, Lucas lives by himself in a dilapidated apartment, and he is a pale imitation of the person he used to be. Although I am aware of everything, I do not feel any sympathy for him. To speak for myself, I have resumed my life as a single person and am concentrating entirely on my profession. It was too much for me to bear to continue living in the condo that I shared with Lucas, so I decided to put it up for sale. I feel lighter than I ever have before since this is a new beginning. Due to the fact that property values had increased over the course of the previous few years, I was able to make a substantial profit when I sold the condominium. I was also successful in selling the automobile that Lucas and Miriam had been driving to a person I knew. Using that money, I was able to purchase a brand new automobile for myself. My sister, who had been such a tremendous help, told me, "Good job, Jenna." Once everything had calmed down and everything had resumed its normal routine. Simply put him in your mind as a dog that has bitten you. Forget about him and move on with your life. But the next time, don't choose a man just on the basis of his attractiveness, okay? She was absolutely correct. A valuable lesson was imparted upon me by the entirety of this encounter. I believe that I am finished with marriage. Having come to the realization that living for my profession is much more suitable for me. My new home is a single unit in a tower apartment that I just recently purchased. I've been living here for a while now. What is the most enjoyable aspect? Pets are permitted in this flat. It is my intention to finally obtain the cat that I have always dreamed of having now that my job life has returned to its normal routine. Moving forward, I intend to concentrate on the things that I already possess, to take care of myself, and to lead a life that is both good and satisfying.
I stared at the glowing screen of Adam's phone, my heart pounding in my chest. The message from Claire blinked innocently, but its contents were anything but. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same place." My fingers trembled as I set the phone back on the nightstand. Adam's soft snores filled our bedroom, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I slipped out of bed, padding quietly to the kitchen of our cramped apartment. The clock on the microwave read 2:17 a.m. I gripped the edge of the counter, willing my breathing to slow. This had to be a mistake. There had to be an explanation. "Em?" Adam's sleepy voice startled me. "What are you doing up?" I turned, forcing a smile. "Just getting some water. Go back to sleep." He yawned, running a hand through his tousled hair. "You okay? You look pale." "I'm fine," I lied. "Really?" Adam shrugged, shuffling back to bed. I watched him go, my mind racing. Should I confront him now? Demand answers? Or wait and see what happened? The next morning, I went through the motions of getting ready for work. Adam kissed me goodbye, same as always. "Have a great day, hon." "Love you." "Love you too," I echoed, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. At the nonprofit where I worked, I couldn't focus. My coworker, Jen, noticed immediately. "Emily, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I hesitated, then spilled everything. Jen's eyes widened as I told her about the text. "Oh, sweetie," she said, squeezing my hand. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to follow him, see where he goes, but that feels wrong." Jen shook her head. "No, you need answers. If he's cheating, you deserve to know." The rest of the day crawled by. When 5 o'clock finally arrived, I raced to my car. Adam usually got home around 6:30. I had time. I parked down the street from our apartment, my stomach in knots. At 6:15, Adam's car pulled up, but instead of going inside, he walked to the corner and hailed a cab. My hands shook as I started the engine, following at a safe distance. We wound through the city until the cab stopped outside a trendy bar downtown. I watched, bile rising in my throat as Adam strode inside. 5 minutes later, a pretty blonde woman arrived. She glanced around before entering the bar. Tears blurred my vision as I fumbled for my phone. I snapped a picture just as the woman disappeared inside. "Oh, Adam," I whispered. "How could you?" I don't know how long I sat there, numb with shock and betrayal. My phone buzzed, a text from Adam. "Working late tonight, babe. Don't wait up." Anger surged through me, hot and fierce. I started the car, my mind made up. No more lies, no more excuses. As I pulled into our parking lot, my phone rang. It was Adam's mother, Lily. "Emily, dear." Her syrupy voice grated on my nerves. "I was thinking of stopping by tomorrow. Adam mentioned you two might be ready to start looking at houses. I have some ideas." "Now's not a good time, Lily," I cut her off. "I'll have to call you back." I ended the call, ignoring her protests. Taking a deep breath, I marched up to our apartment. It was time for a reckoning. The lights were off when I entered. I flicked them on, revealing the shabby furniture and peeling wallpaper. How had I let Lily convince us this dump was all we could afford? I grabbed a suitcase from the closet and began throwing Adam's clothes inside. Each item fueled my rage. By the time I heard his key in the lock, I was ready. Adam stumbled in, reeking of alcohol and perfume. He froze when he saw me. "Em, what's going on?" I met his confused gaze, my voice steady. "I think it's time we had a talk, Adam, about Claire." 3 months had passed since that fateful night. Adam swore it was a one-time mistake, begged for forgiveness. Like a fool, I believed him. Now, as I stared at our dwindling bank account, I wondered if I'd made the right choice. "Em, did you hear what I said?" Adam's voice snapped me back to reality. We sat at our rickety kitchen table, bills spread before us. "Sorry, what?" he sighed, exasperated. "I said, Mom thinks we should look at that new condo development downtown." I blinked, stunned. "Adam, we can barely afford this place. How could we possibly—" "Mom says she'll help with the down payment," he interrupted. "She thinks it's a great investment." Of course she did. Lily always had an opinion on our finances, our careers, our entire lives. I bit back a retort, trying to stay calm. "That's generous, but I'm not comfortable taking money from your mother." Adam's face darkened. "Why not? She's just trying to help." "Help control us, you mean?" I muttered. "What was that?" I forced a smile. "Nothing. Look, can we talk about this later? I have to get ready for work." As I gathered my things, my phone buzzed. A text from my mom, "Dinner this weekend?" Before I could reply, Adam appeared behind me. "Who's that?" "Just my mom," I said, pocketing the phone. "She wants to have dinner." Adam frowned. "This weekend? But we're supposed to look at condos with my mother." I stared at him, incredulous. "When did we decide that?" "I told you last night," he insisted. You must not have been listening. The argument that followed was brief but intense. In the end, I caved. Again. "Fine," I snapped. "Tell your mother we'll go." At work, I couldn't focus. Jen found me hiding in the supply closet, fighting back tears. "Oh, honey," she said, pulling me into a hug. "What happened?" I spilled everything, the condo, Lily's interference, Adam's attitude. Jen listened, her expression growing more concerned. "Emily," she said gently, "are you sure this is what you want? You seem so unhappy." I wiped my eyes, straightening my shoulders. "It's just a rough patch. We'll get through it." But as the weekend approached, my anxiety skyrocketed. At a Saturday morning, I found myself trailing behind Adam and Lily as they toured a sleek, modern condo. "Isn't it perfect?" Lily gushed, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the granite countertop. "Adam, darling, this is exactly what you need." I bristled at her words. What Adam needed, not what we needed. The realtor, a perky blonde named Sarah, turned to me. "What do you think, Mrs. Thompson? Can you see yourself living here?" Before I could answer, Lily cut in. "Oh, she loves it. Don't you, Emily?" I forced a smile, my hands clenched at my sides. "It's nice." Adam shot me a warning look. I knew that look. It meant, don't start anything. As Sarah led us to the master bedroom, my phone vibrated. A text from my dad. "Everything okay, sweetie? Haven't heard from you in a while." Guilt washed over me. I'd been so caught up in this condo nightmare I'd neglected my own parents. "Emily!" Lily's sharp voice made me jump. "Put that phone away. This is important." I looked up to see all three of them staring at me. Lily annoyed, Adam embarrassed, Sarah confused. Something inside me snapped. "You know what?" I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I need some air." I turned and walked out, ignoring Adam's calls. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, trembling. What was I doing? This wasn't the life I wanted. This wasn't the marriage I dreamed of. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from our joint bank account. A large transfer had just been made, the down payment for the condo. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring with tears. Adam had done it, without even asking me. As I heard their footsteps approaching, I made a decision. It was time to stand up for myself, time to fight for the life I deserved. Taking a deep breath, I squared my shoulders and prepared for the confrontation that was about to come. The condo felt like a gilded cage. 2 weeks after moving in, I found myself staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows, longing for our old, cramped apartment. At least there, I'd felt at home. The sound of a key in the lock made me tense. Adam or Lily? These days, it was hard to tell who'd come barging in uninvited. "Emily, darling." Lily's shrill voice echoed through the space. "Where are you?" I plastered on a smile and turned to face my mother-in-law. "Hi, Lily. I didn't know you were coming over." She waved a manicured hand dismissively. "Oh, I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd drop by and see how you're settling in." Her eyes narrowed as she surveyed the living room. "You haven't unpacked everything yet?" I bit back a retort. "We've been busy with work. It's a process." Lily clicked her tongue. "Well, we can't have that. I'll call my interior decorator. She'll have this place looking fabulous in no time." "That's really not necessary." "Nonsense," Lily interrupted. "It's the least I can do. After all, I helped you get this lovely home." The way she emphasized helped made my skin crawl, as if we were children who couldn't manage on our own. "Actually, Lily," I said, finding my voice, "Adam and I were thinking of decorating ourselves. Make it our own, you know?" Lily's smile tightened. "Oh, sweetie, that's adorable. But let's leave it to the professionals, shall we? We wouldn't want it looking cheap." Before I could respond, she was on her phone, chattering away to her decorator. I retreated to the kitchen, my hands shaking as I poured myself a glass of water. This was supposed to be our fresh start, our chance to rebuild after Adam's indiscretion. Instead, it felt like Lily was taking over our lives more than ever. The front door opened again, and Adam's voice drifted in. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I stayed in the kitchen, listening to their muffled conversation. When Adam finally appeared, he looked sheepish. "Hey, Em. Sorry about this. You know how Mom gets." I set down my glass, harder than necessary. "Yeah, I do. The question is, why do you let her?" Adam's face darkened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm tired of your mother making decisions for us." I snapped. "This is our home, Adam. Ours, not hers. She's just trying to help," he argued. "Why can't you be grateful?" "Grateful?" I laughed bitterly. "For what? For undermining every choice we make? For treating me like I'm not good enough for her precious son?" Adam's jaw clenched. "That's not fair. Mom loves you." "No, Adam, she loves controlling you, and by extension, me." Our raised voices must have carried, because suddenly Lily appeared in the doorway. "Is everything all right in here?" I opened my mouth to speak, but Adam cut me off. "It's fine, Mom. Just a little disagreement about decorating." Lily's eyes gleamed with interest. "Oh, well, I'm sure we can sort that out. Emily, dear, why don't you tell me your ideas? I'm sure we can find a compromise." The condescension in her tone was the last straw. "You know what, Lily? I don't want to compromise. This is my home, mine and Adam's, not yours." The room fell silent. Adam looked horrified, while Lily's face turned an alarming shade of red. "Well," she said, her voice dangerously low, "I see someone's forgotten their manners. Adam, are you going to let her speak to me like that?" I turned to my husband, silently pleading with him to stand up for me, for us. But as I watched the conflict play out on his face, I knew he would choose her. He always did. "Em," he said softly, "maybe you should apologize." In that moment, something inside me broke. This beautiful condo, this fresh start, it was all a lie. Nothing had changed. Nothing ever would. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. "I need some air," I muttered. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard Lily's voice behind me. "Really, Adam, I don't know why you put up with her attitude." The elevator doors closed on Adam's reply, and I leaned against the wall, fighting back tears. I'd thought moving here would fix things. Instead, it had only made everything worse. As the elevator descended, I realized I had a choice to make. Stay and fight for a marriage that was slipping away, or find the strength to walk away and reclaim my life. The doors opened, and I stepped out into the sunlight, unsure of where to go, but knowing I couldn't stay here any longer. I sat in my parents' cozy living room, clutching a mug of tea, trying to find the words to explain the mess my life had become. Mom and Dad exchanged worried glances as I recounted the latest drama with Lily and Adam. "Oh, sweetheart," Mom said, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "I'm so sorry you're going through this." Dad's face was a storm cloud. "That woman has no right to treat you this way. And Adam, he needs to grow a spine." I nodded, fighting back tears. I just don't know what to do anymore. It's like I'm losing myself in their world. The sharp trill of my phone cut through the moment. Adam's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. Em, where are you? His voice was tight with tension. Mom's been trying to reach you all day. I bit back sarcastic reply. I'm at my parents'. I needed some space. Space? Adam sounded incredulous. We have that dinner with my boss tonight. You knew that. The dinner. I'd completely forgotten. I'm sorry, Just get home, he interrupted. Mom's already here to help you get ready. The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at the phone, a knot forming in my stomach. Everything okay? Dad asked, his brow furrowed with concern. I stood, gathering my things. I have to go. There's this work dinner for Adam. Mom frowned. Emily, honey, maybe you should stay here tonight. You seem exhausted. Part of me wanted nothing more than to curl up in my childhood bedroom and forget the world, but I knew the fallout wouldn't be worth it. I'll be fine, I assured them, forcing a smile. I'll call you tomorrow. The drive home felt like a march to the gallows. As I entered the condo, Lily's voice hit me like a physical force. There you are, she exclaimed, rushing over. Honestly, Emily, how could you be so irresponsible, running off like that when you knew how important tonight is? I opened my mouth to defend myself, but Adam cut in. It doesn't matter now. She's here. Let's just get ready. Lily clucked her tongue, eyeing me critically. Well, we'll have to work quickly. I've laid out a dress for you. Go shower, and I'll do your makeup. For a moment, I considered turning around and walking right back out the door. But Adam's pleading look stopped me. Please, Em, this dinner could mean a big promotion. Defeated, I nodded and headed for the bathroom. As the hot water washed over me, I tried to steel myself for the evening ahead. An hour later, I stood before the mirror, barely recognizing myself. The dress Lily had chosen was tight and low-cut, nothing like my usual style. My face felt heavy with makeup. Perfect, Lily beamed, adjusting my hair. Now you look like a proper executive's wife. The words stung more than they should have. Is that all I was now? An accessory to Adam's career? As we prepared to leave, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Hope you're okay, sweetie. We're always here if you need us. A lump formed in my throat. I started to type a reply, but Lily's sharp voice interrupted. Emily, phone away. It's time to go. I looked up to see Adam already halfway out the door, Lily hovering impatiently behind him. Neither of them seemed to notice or care about my discomfort. In that moment, something shifted inside me. I thought about my parents' warm concern, contrasted with the cold expectations surrounding me now. I thought about the woman I used to be, confident, independent, and the shell I'd become. Actually, I heard myself say, my voice stronger than I expected, I don't think I'll be joining you tonight. Adam froze, turning slowly to face me. What? Lily's eyes narrowed dangerously. Don't be ridiculous. Of course you're coming. I stood my ground, heart pounding. No, I'm not. And I think it's time we had a serious talk about our future, Adam. All of us. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched emotions flicker across Adam's face. Confusion, anger, and finally, fear. He knew, as well as I did, that this was a turning point. Whatever happened next would change everything. The tension in the room was palpable as Adam, Lily, and I faced each other. I'd changed out of the tight dress, back into my comfortable jeans and sweater, feeling more like myself. Emily, Adam began, his voice strained. What's this all about? We're going to be late. I took a deep breath. We need to talk about us, Adam, about our future. Lily scoffed. This is ridiculous. You're jeopardizing Adam's career over what? A little family disagreement? It's not little, I countered, my voice stronger than I felt. It's our life, and I'm tired of feeling like I don't have a say in it. Adam's face softened slightly. Em, I know things have been tough, but... Tough? I laughed bitterly. Adam, I feel like I'm disappearing, like everything that makes me who I am is being erased. Lily stepped forward, her eyes flashing. Now you listen here, young lady. Adam has given you a beautiful home, a comfortable life, and this is how you repay him? Mom, Adam warned, but she was on a roll. You should be grateful. Instead, you're throwing a tantrum like a spoiled child. What about your parents, Emily? Did they put these ideas in your head? The mention of my parents was the spark that ignited the powder keg. Leave them out of this, I snapped. They've done nothing but support us. Support? Lily sneered. They're holding you back. Adam, tell her. Tell her how her parents are dragging you down. I turned to Adam, shock and hurt coursing through me. What is she talking about? Adam shifted uncomfortably. It's nothing, Em, just some things Mom and I discussed. What things? I demanded. Lily jumped in, about how your parents are always asking for help, how they're a financial burden. Adam agrees it's time to cut ties. The room spun. I stared at Adam, silently begging him to deny it, but his silence spoke volumes. You, I whispered, my voice breaking. You want to cut my parents out of our lives? Em, it's not like that, Adam pleaded. We just think it might be best if we focused on our future, on building our own family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My parents have never asked us for anything. They've only ever tried to help. Help? Lily scoffed. By filling your head with nonsense about independence and following your dreams? Please. It's time you grew up, Emily. I turned to Adam, tears stinging my eyes. And you agree with this? He hesitated, then nodded slowly. I think Mom has a point, Em. We need to start putting ourselves first. In that moment, something inside me shattered. The man I loved, the man I thought I knew, was siding with his mother over me, over my family. I see, I said, my voice eerily calm. Well then, I guess I know where I stand. I moved towards the bedroom, but Adam caught my arm. Em, wait, where are you going? I shook off his grip. I'm packing a bag. I can't stay here tonight, maybe not ever. Don't be dramatic, Lily snapped. Adam, tell her she's being ridiculous. But Adam just stood there, conflict etched across his face. Em, please, we can work this out. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. A man so entangled in his mother's web that he couldn't see the damage he was causing. Can we? I asked softly. Because from where I'm standing, it seems like you've already made your choice. I turned and walked into the bedroom, my heart pounding. As I threw clothes into a suitcase, I heard Lily's shrill voice and Adam's muffled responses. But I tuned them out, focusing on the task at hand. When I emerged with my bag, Adam was alone, Lily having finally left for the dinner. Emily, he said, his voice breaking. Please don't go. I met his gaze, feeling a strange mix of sadness and resolve. I have to, Adam. I need time to think, to figure out if there's anything left to save here. As I reached for the door, Adam called out one last time. I love you, Em. I paused, my hand on the doorknob. I love you too, Adam, but right now, that's not enough. With that, I stepped out into the hallway, closing the door on the life I'd known. As I rode the elevator down, I realized I was facing a crossroads. Stay and fight for a marriage that was crumbling, or leave and rediscover the woman I used to be. The choice, I knew, would change everything. 2 weeks had passed since I'd walked out of the condo. 2 weeks of soul-searching, of rediscovering who I was without Adam's shadow looming over me. I'd been staying with my parents, their unwavering support a balm to my battered spirit. But it was time. Time to face the music, to decide once and for all if my marriage was worth saving. I stood outside the condo door, key in hand, heart pounding. Adam's texts had been a mixture of apologies and pleas over the past fortnight. Part of me hoped that this separation had been a wake-up call for him. Taking a deep breath, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The first thing that hit me was the silence. No TV blaring, no Lily's shrill voice offering unsolicited advice, just quiet. Adam? I called out, my voice echoing in the empty space. No response. I moved through the living room, noticing small changes. My favorite throw pillow was missing. The photos of my family were gone from the mantel. A chill ran down my spine as I approached the bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear muffled sounds coming from inside. My hand trembled as I pushed the door open. The world stopped. There, tangled in our sheets, the ones I'd picked out when we first moved in, was Adam. And he wasn't alone. A blonde head peeked out from under the covers, and I found myself staring into the startled eyes of Claire, Adam's coworker. For a moment, no one moved. Then Adam scrambled up, wrapping a sheet around his waist. I can explain. But I was already backing away, my vision blurring with tears. I turned and ran, Adam's desperate calls fading behind me. I made it to the elevator before the sobs hit, racking my body as I slumped against the wall. How could he? After everything we'd been through, how could he do this? My phone buzzed incessantly, Adam, no doubt, trying to reach me. I silenced it, unable to deal with his excuses. Instead, I called the one person I knew would understand. Jen, I choked out when she answered. Can you come get me? I'm at the condo." 20 minutes later, I was in Jen's car, recounting the horrific scene I'd walked in on. "That bastard," Jen seethed, gripping the steering wheel. "I'll kill him." I shook my head, feeling hollow. I can't believe it. Was I so blind? How long has this been going on?" Jen's expression softened. "Oh, honey, this isn't your fault. Adam's the one who broke his vows." As we drove, my shock slowly gave way to anger. Years of compromises, of bending to Adam's and Lily's will flashed through my mind. And for what? To be betrayed in the most painful way possible? "I want to destroy him," I whispered, surprising myself with the vehemence in my voice. Jen glanced at me, a fierce glint in her eye. "Then let's destroy him. You've got options, Em. Legal options." My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Lily. "How dare you upset Adam like this? Call him back immediately." Something snapped inside me. The last thread of hope, of love, severed cleanly. "You're right," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need a lawyer, and I need to document everything." Jen nodded approvingly. "That's my girl. We'll start making calls tomorrow. For now, let's get you somewhere safe." As we pulled up to Jen's apartment, I felt a strange mix of devastation and determination. My marriage was over. That much was clear. But this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my revenge. I stepped out of the car, leaving behind the naive, accommodating Emily. In her place stood a woman scorned, a woman ready to fight for herself. Adam and Lily had no idea what was coming, but they were about to find out. The office of Harriet Sloane, divorce attorney extraordinaire, buzzed with an energy that matched my own determination. I sat across from her, a thick folder of evidence spread between us. "Well, Emily," Harriet said, her steely eyes gleaming, "I must say, you've given me quite a lot to work with." I nodded, my jaw set. "I want everything I'm entitled to, and then some." Harriet smiled, a predatory grin that sent a shiver down my spine. "Oh, we'll get that and more. Adam's infidelity, combined with the financial records you've provided, let's just say he's in for a rude awakening." As we discussed strategy, my phone buzzed incessantly. Adam, again. I silenced it without a second thought. "Now," Harriet continued, "about the condo." A commotion outside interrupted us. Raised voices, a scuffle. Suddenly the door burst open, revealing a disheveled Adam and an irate Lily. "Emily!" Adam cried, his eyes wild. "Please, just talk to me." I stood, fury coursing through my veins. "How dare you come here? This is a private meeting." Lily pushed past Adam, her face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little—" "That's quite enough," Harriet interjected, her voice sharp as a blade. "Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Thompson, I suggest you leave immediately before I call security." Adam stepped forward, his hands outstretched. Baby, please, we can work this out. I made a mistake, but I love you." I laughed, a bitter sound that surprised even me. "Love? You call what you did love? You betrayed me, Adam. You and your mother both." Lily bristled. "Now see here." "No, you see here," I snapped, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. "You've controlled our lives for too long. You pushed me aside, belittled me, tried to cut me off from my own family. Well, guess what? It ends now." Adam's face paled. "What are you saying?" I turned to Harriet, who nodded encouragingly. "I'm saying I want a divorce, and I'm going to take you for everything you're worth." The room fell silent. Adam staggered back as if I'd physically struck him. Lily's mouth opened and closed, for once at a loss for words. "You can't do this," Adam finally whispered. "What about our life together? Our future?" "Our future," I echoed incredulously. "You threw that away the moment you decided to sleep with Claire." Adam's eyes widened in shock. Lily gasped, turning to her son. "You didn't." "Oh, he did," I confirmed, a grim satisfaction settling over me. In our bed, no less. The look of betrayal on Lily's face almost made me laugh. Almost. "Adam," she hissed, "is this true?" He fumbled for words, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. "Mom, It's not." "Save it," I cut in. "I have all the evidence I need. Now both of you, get out." Security arrived, summoned by Harriet's discreet call. As they were escorted out, Adam made one last desperate plea. "Emily, please. I'll do anything. We can start over, just the two of us. No more interference, I promise." For a moment I wavered. The look in his eyes, so familiar, so full of regret. But then I remembered the sight of him with Claire, and my resolve hardened. "Goodbye, Adam," I said quietly, turning away. As the door closed behind them, I sank back into my chair, exhausted but exhilarated. Harriet watched me carefully. "Are you all right?" she asked. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. Yes, I replied, surprised to find I meant it. I think I finally am. Harriet nodded approvingly. Good, now let's get back to business. We have a lot of work to do. As we dove back into the details of the divorce proceedings, I felt a spark of excitement. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my life. The road ahead would be challenging, but I was ready. Adam and Lily had underestimated me for the last time. Now it was my turn to show them exactly what I was capable of. 1 year. It had been 1 year since I'd walked out of that condo, leaving behind a life that no longer fit. As I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my blazer, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Gone was the meek, accommodating Emily. In her place stood someone stronger, fiercer. Today was the day. The final hearing in my divorce proceedings against Adam. I'd fought tooth and nail for every concession, every dollar. Harriet had been a godsend, guiding me through the legal labyrinth with a shark-like tenacity that matched my own newfound determination. As I entered the courthouse, I spotted Adam and Lily huddled together, looking haggard and defeated. Adam's eyes met mine, a flicker of regret passing over his face. I held his gaze unflinching before turning away. The proceedings were a blur of legal jargon and tense negotiations, but when the judge finally announced her decision, time seemed to stand still. In light of the evidence presented, the court rules in favor of the plaintiff, Emily Thompson. I closed my eyes, relief washing over me as the judge detailed the settlement. The condo, half of Adam's savings, alimony. It was more than I dared hope for. As we filed out of the courtroom, Lily accosted me, her face twisted with fury. "You've ruined him," she hissed. "Are you happy now?" I met her gaze calmly. "No, Lily, you ruined him. You and your constant meddling, your toxic influence. I just finally stood up for myself." Adam appeared behind her, looking shell-shocked. "Em? Save it, Adam." I cut him off. It's over. Really, truly over. As I walked away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was done. I was free. Months passed. I threw myself into my work at the nonprofit, channeling my newfound energy into causes I believed in. I reconnected with old friends, rebuilt my relationship with my parents. Slowly but surely, I rediscovered the joy in life that I'd lost during my marriage. Then, on a crisp autumn evening, my phone rang. Lily's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. "Emily?" Lily's voice was small, broken. I need your help." She went on to explain how Adam had spiraled after the divorce, losing his job, turning to drinking. She was at her wit's end. "Please," she begged. "You're the only one who might be able to get through to him." For a moment, I was tempted. The old Emily would have rushed to help, would have sacrificed her own well-being for others. But I wasn't that woman anymore. "I'm sorry, Lily," I said. My voice firm but not unkind. "But that's not my responsibility anymore. Adam's choices are his own, just like yours. I hope you both find the help you need, but it won't be from me." I ended the call, a sense of finality settling over me. It was the last thread connecting me to my old life, and I'd just cut it clean. Later that night, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, watching the city lights twinkle below. My phone buzzed with a text from Jen. "Drinks tomorrow to celebrate your promotion?" I smiled, typing back a quick, "Absolutely." As I gazed out at the skyline, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been hard, painful at times, but I'd emerged stronger, wiser, more true to myself than I'd ever been. I thought about the woman I was a year ago, trapped in a loveless marriage, constantly bending to the will of others. She seemed like a stranger now. "You did it, Emily," I whispered to myself, raising my glass in a silent toast. "You survived. You thrived." The future stretched out before me, full of possibilities. For the first time in years, I was excited to see where life would take me next. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew I had the strength to face them. As the cool night air caressed my face, I closed my eyes, savoring the moment. This wasn't an ending, I realized. It was a beginning. My beginning. And I couldn't wait to see what came next.